I work really hard to make videos for you all, so please subscribe to my channel and like this video. Also, make sure to tell me your name and where you are watching this story from. Let's start the story. I was 24 when I signed the lease. Too young, too broke, and far too desperate to recognize I was about to enter a trap. My graduate program at SUNY New Paltz had only just started. Rent in the Kingston area was absurd, and apartments that came cheap enough were microscopic or already crammed with other students. I'd scoured Craigslist until the blue glow of my laptop blurred my eyes, scrolling ad after ad of dingy basements with mold speckling the corners, or roommate situations that came across more like Craigslist horror stories than living arrangements. That's when the Sycamore Hill listing appeared. 4-bedroom Victorian house, $900 a month, utilities included. It was impossible. Less than what people paid to rent a room in town. My first reaction was suspicion, but when I clicked on the grainy cell phone photos, the house massive and alone at the top of a wooded hill, wraparound porch tilting a little, the windows dark and heavy with curtains, something in me leaned forward. It wasn't just the price, it was the possibility. The idea of living in a full Victorian house while my classmates bunked 4 to a dorm. The thought hooked into me like a lure. The landlord, William Rourke, met me the next morning. He was wiry, jittery, squinting into the October sun like a man who had not slept properly in years. He avoided my eyes, chain-smoking while I walked through. By the time I reached the ground floor living room, a cavernous space with ceilings so high they seemed to float above the chandelier, he was already thrusting the lease toward me. I did not linger on the peeling wallpaper, the mildew smell ground deep into the wood, or the faint warped creak of the floor under each step. I did not think of the way Rourke's nervous hands fidgeted with his keys like they were objects he couldn't let go of fast enough. I signed. The house swallowed sound. That was the first thing I noticed. On my first night, the silence pressed against my skull like a hand smothering me. No cars, no neighbors, no wind between the oaks outside. Just the long groan of settling wood and the hiss of pipes buried in the walls. And the footsteps. I was in my upstairs bedroom, laptop open on my knees, when I heard them above me. Slow, deliberate pacing, heel to toe, back and forth. A chill spread through me because my room was already on the second floor. There was nothing above, but attic. I pressed my palms over my ears. I didn't sleep that night, just lay bundled under blankets. Every creak amplified until dawn dissolved me into fitful half-rest. By the third night, the house began murmuring. At first it was faint, like static from an old TV left running in a distant room. Words tangled in indistinct patterns, but the longer I lived there, the sharper they became. Do you see me? Don't tell him. He's coming. The whispers seeped from the vents in the walls, threading through the hollow metal like whispers in a throat. Once, whiskey burning hot through my blood, I knelt beside one of the vents, tilted my lips close, and whispered, "What do you want?" The reply came after a too long pause. One word, perfectly shaped, spoken in no voice I could entirely place. Male, female, young, old. It was all of them, bound together in a single hiss. Company. There was a door in the attic the landlord had not mentioned. I found it one afternoon at the end of October, when weak sunlight stretched across the dust-thick boards of the third floor. Behind collapsed boxes and rotting luggage was a narrow black-painted door, standing crooked in its frame. The knob was brass, dull with time. When I reached for it, a shiver traveled my arm, as though I'd plunged my wrist into ice water. It rattled when I twisted it, but did not yield. Locked. I pressed my ear against it. What I heard was not silence. It was breathing. Long, slow, patient. Later that night, I called Rourke, asked him about the locked attic room. His reply came clipped, snapped like a trap shutting. "Don't touch it. Don't go near it." "Why is it there?" I pressed. His voice turned ragged with fear, like he was barely holding his tone. "Because it has to be. Just leave it alone." He hung up. That night, the whispers chanted ceaselessly from the vents until my sanity thinned like worn cloth. Behind the door, behind the door, behind the door. On Halloween night, the neighborhood came alive. Jack-o'-lanterns glowing, children in costumes running door to door. My house stood black and silent at the top of Sycamore Hill. No pumpkin on the porch, no smile of welcome. I stood by my bedroom window watching, lonely and too restless to sit. It was then that the reflection in the glass betrayed me. There was me, of course, pale from weeks without sleep, and behind me, in the faint outline of room reflected in the glass, was another figure. It towered, stretched long where its arms should have ended, faceless, head tilting as if curious. My throat closed. I could not move. When I finally spun around, the room was empty. Yet when I turned back to the window, there was only me again. By November, the house was alive. The footsteps followed me from room to room. Whispers burst into screams, raw and guttural, rattling picture frames from the plaster. The chandelier in the living room occasionally swayed, though no draft moved. I smelled sulfur at unpredictable times, sharp, choking, burning the back of my throat until I ran outside gagging. The odor always dissipated the moment I staggered back in. I bought a tape recorder, left it running near the vents at night. Each morning I replayed hours of nothing but static. Even when I screamed directly into the recorder, the playback revealed nothing. The house erased proof. One night in late November, silence replaced the whispers. Not a natural silence, but absence. Like sound itself had been sucked out of the air. My ears rang from it. That's when I heard the attic hinges creak, slow, groaning, the unmistakable rasp of the black door opening by itself. And the stillness inside me shattered. Terror wasn't the word, it was an ancient prey response, as though I'd stepped into a predator's open mouth. Gripping a flashlight, I ascended the attic stairs. The stench of sulfur grew thicker the higher I climbed. The floorboards almost slick with condensation, as though the house itself was sweating. The door waited, ajar. When I swung the beam inside, geometry betrayed reality. The walls skewed away from me at warped angles, corners stretched tall and impossible, space bent wrong. And they stood there. Not one, not two, but dozens. Tall silhouettes cut from the deepest black, bodies jutting with limbs knotted too long, swaying, pivoting. As if the moment I opened the door, they had turned to face me. No faces, but I felt their gaze. And then from one figure, a mouth split too wide across where its face should have been, outspilled every voice the house had ever spoken in at once. Company. The flashlight slipped from my hand. I don't remember fleeing down the stairs. I only remember the taste of copper in my mouth and the door slamming behind me hard enough to shake plaster loose. From then on, I wasn't alone in the rooms anymore. I saw fingers curling around my doorframe while I lay in bed, heard someone breathing inches from me, though the darkness revealed no one. I found wet footprints across my floorboards, climbing the walls up toward the ceiling. One night I woke to nails dragging lightly across my scalp, petting me, testing me. Another night, a woman without legs dragged herself relentlessly down the upstairs hallway, clawing grooves into the wood, staring with eyes painted full black. When I blinked, she was gone, but her scratches remained. The whispers turned direct, ceaseless. You opened the way. You belong to us. Stay. I stopped sleeping. Desperate, I drove to find Rourke. His apartment was a sagging unit in a nowhere town. He looked 15 years older than the last time I'd seen him. Skin slack, eyes red-shot. "You shouldn't be here," he rasped when I demanded to know the truth. "You stayed too long." He told me Sycamore Hill was a conduit. The house wasn't simply haunted, it was a threshold. Built in 1894 by a family of spiritualists who practiced seances in its bones. They'd pierced the veil, let things through, but never closed it. It feeds. It keeps itself hidden, waiting. Anytime the rooms stand empty too long, it reaches out for bait, people who won't be missed. Students, young, cheap, desperate. That's why the rent had to stay low. His hands trembled as he said the words I can't forget. "You've seen behind the door. It won't close again. It's awake now." He slammed his own door in my face. By mid-December, the haunting crossed thresholds I didn't think possible. I'd see figures crowding the staircase at night, faceless heads cocked, limbs scraping. I'd blink and they'd vanish, leaving claw marks raked into banisters. Windows sometimes filled with pale hands pressing from the other side of glass. Inside, not out. The house pulsed with voices. Yours. Forever. You. The chandelier in the foyer exploded, raining glass. And still I stayed, frozen in terror, incapable of moving, as though the house exerted a gravity I couldn't resist. December 22nd. I woke cold, every light in the house dead. My bedroom door rattled violently, fists pounded from the other side, wood bowing inward. The sulfur stench smothered everything. The door flew open on its own. From the hallway they came, scores of them, swaying, crawling, faceless and endless. At their center loomed something greater, 8 feet tall, arms scraping floorboards, a cavern where a face should be. It spoke in all voices the house had ever uttered at once, a sound like metal grinding across glass. "Company!" Darkness folded over me. The next memory I possess is of cold snow beneath my bare feet, night air cutting my lungs open. I was screaming without words, stumbling down Sycamore Hill and not daring even once to look back. The house has erased itself again. Property records vanished. The lot stands empty when I force myself to check, desperate for reassurance. But I know walls don't need to stand to keep breathing. Some nights, lying in bed 3 states away, I still hear it. Vents, whispering when no air passes through them, a voice threading into me like smoke, reminding, "Behind the door. Company." And worst of all, sometimes I dream of the house again. Not dark and abandoned, but waiting. The black doors swinging wider, welcoming me back.